So when I first looked at this on my phone, uh, very first pass, I thought, oh, this is like a macro of some kind of crystals or something. It was really kind of cool looking that way. And it wasn't until I looked at the title and looked at it at a bigger screen. And it's a really wonderful abstract, in my opinion. Well seen. Such things are sometimes harder to capture. When you look at it and you have the impression and you're right there under it, I find it's frequently hard to capture something like that to look as impressive as it does in person. And it's pretty well composed. The only composition suggestion I would have is at the very top, right in the middle, there's one shingle, I guess you call it, that's a shingle that's barely poking into the frame. And I mean, this is nitpicking, but either get more of it in or get it out, crop it out one way or the other. But just that little smidgen is slightly distracting. And it's overall just kind of white. And if it had a little more contrast to make it pop, or it might be a little more dramatic with some more contrast somehow. But it's a very nice image. I like it.
All right. Next one is Black Coyote.
All right. So this is a great capture, especially of its face. It even has catch lights in the eyes, and it's arresting, and I'm glad it's not looking at me. I'm assuming it's using a pretty long lens. Doesn't look very pleased at being photographed and probably didn't sign a model release. The background is, a little distracting behind the haunches. It's just kind of busy and buzzy looking, and I'm not sure why that is. And I think the face and maybe the front paws are the most interesting part of the animal, and that if you cropped it just a wee bit closer, it might be a little stronger image. And remove some of the buzzy background behind his haunches. Yeah, I'm glad I'm not staring this guy down. Although supposedly humans are safe from coyotes. Cool image.
The next one is Conflict of Land and Sea.
Right. So this is a great landscape scene, obviously. You can almost hear the waves and feel the wind from that the photographer felt while standing there. It's got a lot of good tonal contrast and range. It's a very dramatic shot. And it might could be improved, but not a whole lot. I try to find something to nitpick on everybody, so nobody gets too swelled ahead. So in this case, things that I'd noticed is that the curve of the cliff on the left side of the frame just runs right up to the edge and stops. And, it's part of that. Try to avoid things in the image being right up next to the edge. It's like cutting people's hands off or fingertips touching the edge of a frame. And likewise, at the very top of the scene, there's some hills in the distance on the left top that I don't know how much farther up they go, but that's a little distracting. It might be a little stronger if you could either go up from that or come down from that so that you don't get that little odd transition. But it's a very nice image.
Okay, next one, Creepy Crawly Cactus.
Yeah, I've never seen a crawling cactus. Are there any bugs in there that I didn't notice? Anyway, it's a good macro shot, and I'm assuming there's some focus stacking going on there. and I like the black background for separation, but I'm thinking the image might be a little stronger in color. I know this is a black and white image, but just as a suggestion, because it looks like there's a flower or something in there that's just kind of a white, and I think it would be a more dramatic image if that was in color. And I'm a little bit distracted by the out of focus up in the top right corner. But it's a nice shot. And I think that's about it. It's a good macro.
Next, daydreaming.
Right. So this is a well seen travel image. All these faces. It looks like it's India, I'm pretty sure. And the expressions on the faces they're pretty much all looking out the window rather than at each other. So it's a good title, but the faces are the key to the image. But I feel like the image is a little busy with like the roof rack on top of the bus and something behind it showing above, and the graphic below the window. I'd like to see it, with more concentration on the faces. You don't really need to know it's a bus because it's pretty obvious it's some kind of mass transit. And maybe a little more contrast. It's a little flat. Could maybe make it better, but you need to get a little closer for the faces, since the faces are the star of the picture, not the bus, in my opinion.
Alrighty, next one is Marshall Point Lighthouse.
Okay, so this is a very lovely landscape in mono, and you see something like this, and it's like, who needs color? This is gorgeous. It just draws your eye in. All the leading lines help for that. You've got the walkway, you've got the coastline, both the near coastline and the far one, and of course the dramatic clouds, and they all sort of draw your eyes to the lighthouse. And that's it's a really great image. It's I'd hang this on my wall and look at it repeatedly. Good impact, visual impact. If I was going to try to improve it anyway or nitpick on it, maybe lose a little bit of the foreground. Not much, but that's maybe a little bit of extraneous. But it's a really nice image.
Very good. Next one is Old Barns in the Country.
All right. So I'm not normally a big fan of sepia, but I think it really fits for this image. You can almost feel the dirt in the air and in your fingers, and it looks like a genuine antique photo that was, like one of these old sepia tone photos. So I think it really fits the subject matter. And the white vignetting around the edge sort of adds to that feeling of antiquity. That's a good move. After I was looking at it a little while, I noticed that the gate is open, and that kind of like something that makes you think about a photo. And it's like, well, the gate's open. What got out? The barn door's open. It's too late to close it. Did the horse get out? Some things like that. And for, if you wanted to try to improve it, maybe, assuming I'm not just totally off in the weeds with this open gate idea, maybe to accentuate the open gate more, so it's more visible. Either open it further or stand to the left a little more. But it's a very nice image, and it's might be my favorite sepia that I've seen in a long time. Very nice.
Next, Peace Bell Detail.
All right. So when I first saw this, my initial thought was it was crop circles, or those lines, the Nazca lines that you can see from airplanes down in Peru. And then I looked at the title, and I thought, oh, that's cool. So it's a great abstract. It's not entirely obvious to me at the beginning. Well, it's not at all obvious to me that it's a bell, obviously, if I think it's crop circles. Some nice texture and detail, well focused. And I guess I don't have, I think these bells are pretty large. I Googled peace bells. And I was thinking an image where you could tell it was part of a bell without having to be told it was part of a bell would be neat. But you can just appreciate the image for the patterns. The patterns are neat, regardless of whether or not it's a bell. So it's a neat image. I wonder what it says up there in the characters.
All right, next one. Oh, since 1956.
Right. So in my notes, I call this Manuel's Tavern because, hey, I've been there. And I imagine an awful lot of people in Atlanta have. It's an Atlanta landmark. And this would probably sell well if you were trying to sell your images online or somewhere, because people like landmarks, and people that have been to Manuel's. You could probably sell a lot of this image. And it looks old. And the only giveaway is that lowest cable that runs from the pole. If you know about cables, that's more of a, I don't know if that's a Comcast cable or an AT&T fiber cable, but it's not an old-timey phone cable. And once I noticed the cable, I noticed it was just touching the tops of the columns. So a slight improvement would be to shoot it maybe at a slightly different angle so that it didn't touch, or you could probably just remove the cable with Photoshop or something. But between it being a modern cable to a geek like myself and the fact that it just touches the tops of those stone columns, I found slightly distracting. But it's not a big deal. And I'd like maybe a little more contrast in it. Feels just a little flat. Maybe a little less sky to focus more on the building. You could do it like a pano. Just some ideas, but it's a cool image, and I bet you'd sell a lot of them if you put them on Etsy or somewhere. That's it for Manuel's Tavern.
All righty. The Maze.
Yes, the maze. You look at this and it's kind of like Vertigo, except I think Vertigo is what you get from being up tall, but it definitely has a whoosh or an awe-inspiring angle. And there's good contrast in it, and you can see, even though the bricks up the side are dark, you can actually see them. The individual bricks, at least down low. I'm not sure what that is, but it's an interesting image that obviously has some leading lines. And if I had a knock, it would probably be that maybe it has too many leading lines, particularly if you're focusing on the maze. So it's like the building on the left, the maze on the right, and then the reflections in the glass. And the reflections give you a nice sense of scale. But I find my eye darting around from one to another, which can be good. This is a really nice image. The reflection of the light, the exposure. I guess perhaps I wish the reflections in the glass weren't there. I don't know. I like it a lot, but there's something about, I like the reflections, but they also distract me. Keeps drawing my eyes down there and away from the maze. And I think that's about it.
All right. Toronto Twist.
Toronto Twist. So this is a an interesting architectural or an abstract shot. I mean, people talk about different types of photography, and sometimes they kind of overlap. And this is, to me, it's both architectural and it's abstract. All these lines and the reflections. This is really pretty cool. It feels like an image. It reminded me of the movie Inception, and then later one of the Doctor Strange movies, where they're always twisting these cityscapes around. But this is real life, or maybe an MC Escher print. Probably only critiques is that the building on the right, the top kind of blends into the sky. It just disappears. The top floor just disappears. There's not enough tonal separation there, and you kind of lose some detail up there at the top. The highlights are a little blown. But again, nitpicky. It's a great shot. I wish I'd taken it. All of my architectural shots are just boring as hell. This one's not. This is good. I think that's about it on Toronto.
All righty. 2 Hour Parking.
All right. So this one has good detail, sharpness, and tonal range. And this is how to take an interesting picture of a brick wall that's not a lens test. And this lens is sharp. It's cool. The sign adds to it, but the sign seems a little too far over to the left. I mean, it's almost out of the picture. And I really almost didn't realize there was a sign there until I looked at the title. And this is another one that I think might be better in color. I'm assuming that there's some rust on the sign, but that the sign itself is not all rusty. So you get more color contrast and it draw you more to that. Assuming, since it's named that, I'm assuming that's part of the intent. I would just like to have the sign jump out at me a little more. And I think perhaps a slightly different crop so that it's not competing with this white rectangle in the bottom right, and maybe add some color. Just some ideas and thoughts. But it's the best brick wall I've ever seen. That's for sure.
All right. Next one, Uncertain Future.
All right. Uncertain Future. This is a very moving subject, composition and lighting, obviously. Very nice tonal ranges, arresting expressions on the faces, especially the child, catchlights in the eyes of the child. And then I noticed that the woman's arm, and I don't know whether it's just the perspective and the way her arm is turned, or if perhaps she had polio as a child, but her arm looks unnaturally small. And it's fascinating. It's not really important to which it is, but it draws my eyes there. And this image, it's like you see it and it immediately kind of, if you have empathy and the uncertain future, it brings about an empathetic feeling. So it's a powerful photo. The thing I find distracting in it is that I imagine like scenes like from the Grapes of Wrath, is I would expect their faces to be, particularly the adult faces, to be kind of weathered from presumably a hard life. and they're just so smooth. And maybe that's an intentional painterly effect. And then because I'm weird and I studied psychology, I'm thinking, well, when I look in the mirror, in my own mirror, I'm always surprised by this old guy staring back at me, because in my mind, I don't feel that old. I don't feel as old as I look. And I don't think of myself as being as old as I am. And so maybe it was, it's reaching for their inner feeling and looking toward the future. I don't know. Thought about it, but it's a very moving photo. There's just something about the smooth skin on the adults. A child should have smooth skin, and she's a beautiful child. I assume that's a girl. But slightly distracted by what felt like perhaps overly photoshopped smooth skin. But great shot.
Alrighty, next one is Upwards.
Upwards. So this is a neat repeating pattern and up a staircase. Good sharpness and detail pretty much all the way. The little curly banisters are cool. And usually when you see these, you see like a completed spiral, or you see all four sides. And this is different, but I kind of missed the fourth side. And I'm also kind of puzzled by the reflections of light on the wood. There's light, there's some light source that's like shining up, and I don't know if there was a flash, but then it's all up in the upper floors too. And it was just kind of puzzling. Where is the light coming from? But it's an interesting shot. You can kind of chase it around the staircase for a while. Pretty cool.
Alrighty, Windows to the Past.
All right, so this one's got really nice tonal variation. You have some grays and particularly in the outside building, and then you got white in the window and the dirt and the cobwebs, and not quite full blacks, and then you got some full-on blacks. So there's a lot of variety in tones, and I like the cobwebs and the dirt and the detail there. And so if this is Windows to the Past, but this building that the photographer is standing in, I don't think is all that new a building, but it's cool. It's got good texture and atmosphere and mood. And I guess you'd categorize this as an architectural shot. And I guess a lot of times when I think of architecture, I'm thinking of exteriors of buildings, but this is something I think a lot of people could walk by and never notice, but the photographer saw this and did a good job of capturing it.
We can make it easier for Scott to keep in order. Let's start with the first one. The title of this one is A Bit Too Close. Go ahead, Scott.
Okay, so this is another one that when I first looked at it on my phone, I couldn't tell what it was, except it was scary looking. And then it is startling and a bit frightening. And I imagine the photographer peering through underbrush to get a view of the pond and being face to face with an alligator. I don't know if that's how it happened, but that's how I imagined it. So the title seemed kind of definitely appropriate, and that big toothy grin. And I found myself wondering, are their lips really that yellow? Not sure. I want to check to find out. But it's a great wildlife capture. And my only is I wish that the depth of field was a little more than just the face to get the size of this huge alligator. Perhaps, although maybe it's more effective blurring out. But the vignetting is maybe a little overdone. I like vignetting, but it makes it hard to realize at first what it is. And maybe that's the point, is that, what is this? And oh shit, pardon the expression. Oh darn, it's an alligator. Oh no, run away, run away. Good shot.
All right, next one, a knockout.
Okay, this one is, for lack of a better word, stunningly beautiful and technically excellent. I love the depth of the reds and the tones. Pretty much tack sharp details. The background is isolated. And if you look on some of the petals over on the right, you can see little teeny droplets of water, and you can see hairs on the bud. So it's really nice technically. Sometimes people say, oh, it's just a flower picture. Well, yeah, this might be just a flower picture, but it's not just a flower picture. This is really nice. I really like this one. And it's certainly better than any flower picture I ever took. That's for darn sure. And I have heard people have critiqued my photos and say you should have an odd number. You should never have an even number. But I think that's a little bit bogus, particularly in this case. And yeah, maybe the bud and the blossom are not really this. So it's two different things. But I think it's strength. It's the baby and it's the adult. Very nice tones. Nice shot.
All righty, next one, Borgata Bound.
So this is a very well executed architectural shot. I think unlike in the mono, the blue sky helps separate the buildings up and from the sky, and I like that. The lines of the three different buildings, and they all point out. It's a very interesting. This is a strong architectural, and the fact that the angles aren't level adds a little tension to it and an interest. It's, sometimes architectural shots are too perfect with perspective correction, but here you get the feeling of standing at the feet of these giant buildings, and the fact that there's a little hole in the I don't know if it's a door or a window. Who would put a door up that high? Maybe it's a balcony. It's probably a little small balcony way up in the sky, but that adds interest in the yellow top. It draws your interest. And then the fact that the building on the left has its corner pointing at the yellow, it all just kind of comes together. Good shot.
All righty, next one, Catboat at Low Tide.
Catboat. So this is an example of not sailing off into the sunset. But so what's the story here? Did the owner know that he would be stranded, he or she would be stranded, and prepare for it? Because the boat seems to be, battened down, but then it's got an anchor. But of course it needs an anchor because the tide will come back in. It's just interesting. It reminded me of a boat I saw in Captiva where somebody did get surprised and their boat was laying over on its side at low tide. But it's a good shot photographically, and the sunset even by itself would be pretty cool. I would like maybe a little more contrast. It's just, and maybe it's my monitor. It's just something with a little more pop to it. The boat's a little dark, the flag's a little dark, but you wouldn't want to tweak it much. And I did notice that the horizon isn't level. It's higher on the left than on the right side by a little bit. And after you look at it a while, I started noticing that. but it's a nice shot.
Alrighty, next one, Dubrovnik rooftops, and boy, those rooftops changed. I was there because I went to Dubrovnik shortly after the war was finished with Serbia. But go ahead.
Cool. So it's a neat, colorful patchwork of roofs. Is it roofs or roofs?
Roofs, rooftops.
Roof.
Yeah.
Really nice texture like that. And it's the lighting is fortunately not harsh sunlight, which I think would be distracting. I do find the hill, it's like I wish I was God and I could kind of remake the landscape, but maybe the photographer could find an angle that didn't include that green hill in the background. I mean, it's photobombing the rooftops. And sometimes the dramatic sky is cool, but in this case, I think it's distracting from the rooftops also. So, maybe a slightly different angle and a little less contrast in the dramatic sky, perhaps might make it a slightly stronger image. But I like it.
Yeah, it's really changed. I'm not sure if I like the old one better than the new one, but they have done a lot of repairs, so that's a good thing. Okay, eagle eyes.
All right. I look at the eagle and it almost looks like he's frowning. And I can see this being the cover picture on an article about politics, where they talk about how 90% of the country thinks the country's going in the wrong direction, but they never point out that people don't agree on which direction the country's going in or which direction it should go in. But I could see this on the cover of a political article. It's a great bird capture. Detail in the feathers and the face, and of course the eyes. But I do find I guess it's a palm tree that's kind of leaning in from the right, and then the palm fronds that are almost touching the eagle's head, a little distracting from the eagle himself, and would like it better if maybe you were closer to the eagle. And I could see it even being good, like almost like a headshot of a human, a headshot of an eagle, if you've got enough pixels and haven't already cropped just a dead-on stare of an eagle, or whether just mainly the eagle's body or just his head. Either one, I think, would be stronger. The tree is just too distracting, in my opinion.
All righty. Elk and Cherokee.
All right, so this is a really lovely, wonderful landscape, and you got wildlife added for added interest to the story. I don't think of it so much as a wildlife picture, because the wildlife are accessories to I think the golden hillside that's just catching either the rising sun or the setting sun. I'm not sure which, but the contrast between the mountaintop that's in the sun and the lower land that's not, and the different colors, and then the pasture, and then the shadowy edge of the forest, where I noticed that all of the elk are grazing far away from the edge of the pasture. And it's like, have they encountered predators before? But it's just a lovely shot. It's the colors. It's a really nice landscape. Painterly, but still enough detail. I think the only thing I could knock on this would be the vignetting, particularly up in the top right corner, is maybe a little dark, but overall, it's a really great shot. I like it.
All righty. Lantern lookup.
So the lantern lookup, Has lovely colors and tones. It's really pretty. The reds and yellows and the slightly different shapes and colors are all pretty cool. I did find I know you can't rebuild somebody's, I don't know, I guess this is a public space of some kind, somebody's lobby or something. That metal bar that's shiny running across kind of right in the middle of it. I would be inclined in Lightroom to darken that so that it doesn't kind of jump out at you. And there's also a white spot, maybe about a quarter of the way over from the left and near the bottom. That those two things are slightly distracting. But it's a great abstract and tone poem, I think. Color poem is maybe the word I'm looking for. But good abstract and good capture. But I would just process out those bright spots if it was me.
Alrighty, next one, lobby seating.
Okay, so this is a very well executed shot. Technically, the exposure, the contrast, the white balance, the focus, the depth of field, they're all pretty much spot on. It could or should be a marketing image for whatever hotel or wherever it was taken. I could see them putting this on their webpage or in some kind of brochures. It's kind of got a casual, but not a casual elegance. It's upscale, but not audacious. At first, I liked the reflection of the painting in the floor. The one at the end, in the distance, it's reflected in the floor. But then once I noticed it, I couldn't stop noticing it, the reflection. So. And then I started thinking about, oh, it's a hallway down there, and there's going to be people walking by, and it's going to be a little less cozy if that's going. So, and then the balcony up in the top. Now, how many people looking at a hotel's webpage are going to look at a picture that way? I don't know. Probably not many, only weirdos like me. But I think a slight improvement to the image would be to maybe lose the balcony, crop down a little bit, make it a little more panoramic. Maybe change the angle so that the picture's not in it. I don't know. We'd have to experiment around with it, but it's I guarantee you I could take a really boring picture of this hotel lobby, but this is not boring. This is very pretty. It's a place it's inviting. Good capture of the mood.
Alrighty, next one, mushroom dance.
So what I like about this is you can tell they're mushrooms without seeing their stems or stalks. It seems like so many mushroom pictures are shot from the side, but this is just the tops of them. But there's still obviously mushrooms even without the title. Now what took me a minute to figure out, and I think I figured it out, is what the mushrooms are growing on. And it looks like it's a large tree trunk or a large limb that's had a smaller limb cut off. And I think the white circle is where the limb was cut off, and that's where the mushrooms are going from. But even without trying to figure it out, it's a lovely mix of colors, different shades of yellow and brown, and then the black, which doesn't sound like many colors, but it works very well together. And it reminded me of an aerial photo, like a satellite photo of an island chain. It doesn't match Hawaii's shape, but it's just sort of reminiscent of a bunch of different islands. It's very pretty. Probably my only complaint is the mushroom that's kind of in the center and looks like it might be tallest and a little closer, it looks like the focus is a little soft on it. The mushrooms at the bottom, their edges are sharper, but that of the three yellow mushrooms, the one in the middle, it just looks a wee bit soft. Whereas the background, the wood behind it all has texture, and I think the texture in the wood makes the mushroom look soft. Depth of field and focus stacking, I guess, but I like this a lot.
Alrighty. Spring leads to fall.
Where's the pollen? Oh, not, thank goodness it's not in the picture because it's everywhere else. So it's a nice abstract, but despite that, it's obviously petals. It's an abstract pattern. And it's good exposure, focus, colors. I'm assuming this was done in a light box or some kind of tabletop setting. Obviously, leaves don't occur like, or petals don't occur this way in nature. And as a photographer, I was like, how did they do this? And then I noticed as I looked at it a little longer, I noticed that the leaves at the bottom were shriveled and the ones at the top were all fresh and dewy and young. So therefore, the title, Spring Leads to Fall. I did find there's one petal near the bottom on the right that has a hole cut. It's a defect. It looks like a cross or a plus sign or something in between. That's a little distracting. And I was thinking it might. It's a cool idea, but I noticed it's not dead center, and it seems to be shot at a slight off angle, not quite straight on. And for a pattern like this, I think it might work better if you actually did shoot it straight on, and maybe do that. I think might make it a little stronger. I know the rule is never put things dead center, but I think for an abstract pattern like this, it might work better. But it's technically very good, and I love the colors and the tones and the petals, even if I resemble the shriveled up flowers at the bottom. But
Hardly.
I heard somebody laugh. I heard.
No,
that.
I said hardly. Okay, the next one is Sunset on the Bay.
Sunset on the Bay.
Yeah.
Sunsets are such an oh so common subject or picture of photographs, and they're oh so hard to get good exposures and dynamic range. I've tried, and this does a really good job of capturing the colors and the mood of the ocean sunset, the pastels, and you don't see the sun, but you've got the colors. It's the tones are really nice. I like the reflection of the sunset in the shallow water around the base of the rock. And it's a really nice mood photograph. I think I'd like it better in either a square or a landscape oriented image. There's the gray clouds up at the very top or just a little more, they don't really add anything. And I think to not get rid of all of them, but I mean, it's nice having the orange on the bottom of the clouds, but maybe lose about half of what's between the orange and the very top and make it a little wider, and go out and lift that rock up so it sticks up a little higher above the horizon. That's easy to do, right? Not. But it's a really nice image, and it's one of the better sunsets I've seen in a while. Very nice.
Alrighty. The winery.
The winery. So when I first looked at the picture, I thought it was a beer brewery because I've been inside a beer brewery before and I've not been inside a winery. Uh, but of course, it is a winery, and it's kind of the industrial reality behind the sophisticated image of wine as a beverage. This is the industrial side of making it. And it doesn't exactly make me, like sniffing a cork. I don't want to go sniff one of those hoses or that plastic bucket down there. But it's an interesting thing to look at. The lined up vats, they're all in focus. The depth of field is good. The exposure is good. You've got some reflections. The water puddle on the floor adds to the industrial atmosphere of the image. I'm not sure that the stairwell in the background and the light coming in through the door, I'm not sure that really adds anything. But it's a good shot, and I like having the hoses there. If you didn't have the hoses and the buckets, it would just be a bunch of steel drums. But having the hoses and the bucket really adds to it. Let's see. I think that it's a good journalistic shot, and I could see this being like whoever makes these vats. Like within the wine industry, there's the wine marketing to the consumer, and there's also bound to be an industry that markets to the people that make wine. And I could see this being in a magazine that is targeted to the people that run wineries. Cool.
All right. Okay, next one.
Next is the worker.
The worker. That's right.
The worker. So I'm not sure what the worker is doing with the structure, or even what the structure is. It looks like it. At first, I thought it was bleachers, but no, that looks like bamboo. Maybe it's a roof. Whatever it is, it looks like there's a lot of work for one worker to do. And it made my knees hurt just looking at it. I did think that if you, so you can actually see the end of the structure up at the top. And I was thinking if you didn't actually see the end of the structure, the mind might assume that it's continuing on up even further to exaggerate the sort of overwhelming burden of this task. If it's trying to be editorial about, workers faced with, really hard jobs. So that was a possible improvement if editorializing is the intent. And the overall impact is kind of brown and could maybe use a little more contrast. But it's a very interesting shot, and it's guilt-inducing as somebody who earned their living behind a desk.
Alrighty. Any more comments?
Nope.
Okay. Trumpet detail.
Okay. So it's a good abstract. Maybe somebody that plays a trumpet would immediately recognize it as a trumpet, but I didn't. It's not that hard to figure out once you could maybe figure out it's some kind of musical instrument in any case. But as somebody noted earlier, it's really hard to take in the introduction. I forget who's going to do the program on, maybe Mike, it was you, was going to do the program on taking pictures of silverware. Shiny objects are hard to take photos of. This does a pretty good job, but the danger is blown highlights, and that horizontal highlight in the top two is a little blown out. And I'm not sure what the trumpet is leaning up against that gray thing with ridges in it. Behind it, I was thinking it might be nice. I mean, you don't want to make it disappear, but if you maybe cut the exposure on that part by like a stop or something, it wouldn't compete as much with the trumpet and with like the little knurled fingertip things. I think it would be nice to separate it without disappearing it. But it's a good abstract, and it's a good work, good shot at shiny things, which are hard.
Alrighty. Wine triptych.
Okay, so this is the other side of wine. This is not the industrial side. This is an image to market wine to consumers, to wine connoisseurs. It's visually interesting. It progresses from light to dark, left to right, as we in this part of the world tend to look at things left to right. The bent, the vertical lines being distorted coming through the empty glass is a nice effect. So it's simple, but it's intriguing. Unfortunately, at least looking at it here and looking at it on my monitor before, there's some color banding in the flask. I guess you'd call that a flask. I'm obviously not a wine connoisseur. But it's like the gradations is kind of distracting, the way that the color banding in the flask is a little distracting. And the light to dark transition makes sense in a way, but it also makes it feel a little unbalanced, perhaps. And I'm thinking of two people sharing a flask of wine, or if you put the empty glass on the left and the flask in the middle. Just started playing around with ideas in my mind, but it's even with the color banding, particularly not reflections, the bent lines coming through the glass, that draws the eye. So it's good that that's in the center, but I don't know. It's an interesting picture. It's an interesting picture.
Alrighty.
I could see it in a high-end bar. If you were at the Ritz, I could see this on the wall.
Alrighty. Thanks a lot, Scott. Good job. Now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and change the size so I can bring these all out. Let's see here. Alrighty. Let's see. Ta-da! There we go. So, Daryl, do you want to announce the winners, or do you want me to do that?
You can go ahead and do it.
Okay.
You're set up, right?
Yeah, I know what they are. Anyway, let's start with monochrome. Honorable mention. Well, there isn't one for monochrome because there's too few images, so we only have first, second, and third. Let's go to third. Third, as I roll around and click on the one you're not sure what's going to be, third place goes to Jen Cardinal's Windows to the Past. Is Jen there?
Yes, I'm here.
Windows to the Past. Tell us about
it. This was an area in the Smoky Mountains where they're trying to preserve. It's several historical buildings in an area, and so they're trying to keep them anyhow. And I was inside one of them. So yes, it's an old building, and just shooting toward another one. It was, yeah, that's all.
Alrighty. Okay. Second place goes to monochrome. Let's pick this one. That's mine, Uncertain Future. I took this a while back and it just was soft. But with the advent of Topaz and Gigapixel and all that stuff, it really helped. So I finally reached a point where I thought the detail was acceptable. So yeah, this was taken in Guatemala. They were across the street, and I zoomed in on them, but so I had to. They're further away, and they didn't know I was even there. But anyway, I took the picture, and I think I got it the way I wanted it. Now, as for the wrinkles in the face, that's a good point, but you don't know their ages, so she may very well only be 23 years old.
Could be.
Typically, people in that part of the world, they look a lot older than you think, especially when they're living in poverty like these folks are. But in the hand, good point, Scott. I noticed the hand was odd, but it's definitely probably polio. You're definitely right about that. I didn't think about that, but that's what it probably is. But anyway, thank you. I finally got it the way I wanted it, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a moving image. It hits you.
Well, what caught me about it was not only that, not only the people just struggling. And just trying to maybe tip him because he's playing the accordion and all that stuff. But what struck me about it is it really fits a Raphael layout and format of Raphael. If you look at Raphael, you see that pyramid effect, and that's what really makes it pop for me. They just happen to be in that position.
You didn't pose him.
Yeah. But anyway, thanks.
I also noted I have a friend who current day plays accordion, and I'm always teasing him about accordions being outlawed by the Geneva Convention.
Well, yeah,
it's a weapon of torture.
Well, I'm showing my age, but it sure heck wasn't outlawed when you watched the Lawrence Welk show. Maybe you're old enough to remember that.
Yes.
First place. Which one am I going to pick for that one? I'm just kidding. First place goes to, let's see, Steve Director's Marshall Point Lighthouse. Steve.
Okay, okay. I'll turn on my camera going. Well, thank you. So Marshall Point is off the coast of Maine. What was interesting, and thank you for selecting this one. When we got there and we took a ferry out to Marshall Point, out to the island actually, it was overcast. It was really kind of gray day. By the time we got back at the end of the day, it was a beautiful sunset. And what caught my eye in this particular shot was the fact that the clouds all seemed to line up in a good way with the lighthouse, with the walkway to the lighthouse. It looks really nice in color, but I thought it might try it in black and white, and I like it a lot in black and white. So thank you.
Good shot. All righty, thank you.
Steve, was that lighthouse recently renovated?
I really
I've
don't
been
know.
to it, but when I went, it was in the middle of being renovated.
Yeah, when was that, Darryl?
Oh, gee, must have been. Was it during? It was pre-COVID. Yeah.
Oh well, I don't know.
That's how you date everything now.
Now, where was this taken?
Pre-COVID or post-COVID?
When was this taken?
Where?
In Maine.
In Maine, Marshall Point. Okay.
Yeah, Marshall Point, Maine.
Okay. Never been to Maine. All righty. Now we go to the color. We do have an honorable mention in color, and it's going to be this one. Steve, you're back again also soon. Cat boat at low tide. Honorable mention, color.
Thank you. I have to say, I don't know what it's looking like on other people's monitors, but what surprised me is that on my monitor, it's a lot more, and the image I thought I submitted was much more vibrant than this. But anyway, it is a nice sunset. I had not, I'll have to go back and look more carefully at that. I hate horizons that are not level. The trouble with this one is that there's kind of stuff happening on the left that makes it look like it's rising above what's on the right. I'll have to go back and look, but anyway, what it's really interesting on Cape Cod, this is where it was taken, is when it's low tide, you could walk for miles out from the shore, miles. The only danger with that is when the tide starts coming in, it comes in very fast because it's so flat. So you have to be a little careful of watching the tides. But what caught my eye here was not just the sunset in the boat, but the way it lined up with the ripples in the sand. So thank you.
Reminds me of Mont Saint Michel in France. You have to watch that tide coming in so fast. That's why they don't want tourists going out there, because they've lost some tourists through the years in that famous site in France. So anyway.
Steve used this image 2 weeks ago for the presentation that he gave to us.
Was I using this one?
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe I was. Okay. It probably looked better then.
And where he was showing us this plug-in that is it a plug-in or standalone? I probably went out and bought it. I was convinced
it's a plug-in.
That gives you all sorts of control over masking in Photoshop. And great picture.
Good memory, Daryl. I'd forgotten about that.
All righty. Anyway, by the way, that program is on YouTube and it was recorded and I cleaned it up so Steve is smooth as silk in that edited version. So he did a good job. Anyway, next one, let's see, third place goes to Borgata Bound by Miss Michelle Simmons. Michelle, is she there? I can't see.
Where is Michelle?
Yeah, she probably left. Okay. But anyway, this is by Michelle, our architecture expert. She does a lot of architecture photography. So, yeah, I wonder if that's, I hope that's not a balcony. You could jump off it. She looks kind of dangerous up there. But anyway, that got third place. Now, second place goes to, let's see here. Where was it? Goes to,
I can tell you.
Well, I know what it is. I'm trying to find it. For some reason, I'm not seeing it. Uncertain Future.
Third row.
Oh, okay.
Elk.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. Let me see here. That's right. I was looking at the wrong one. Anyway, guys, ta-da-ta-da, Elk and Cherokee by Chin Carno gets second place. I don't know why I was looking at monochrome for some reason.
Thank you. Yeah, this was actually close to, it was in Cherokee, and it was close to a, like a rest stop type place. And I really wanted to shoot an elk, and I'd never seen one. And so I asked somebody at the store if, there were any elk around there. And she said, come back when the sun is going down, and there will be about 50 of them out in this field. So sure enough, went back and they were there. It was the coolest thing ever. And some of them would come right up to you. I have a couple pictures of them like really close.
Well, as long as you didn't get that guy on the far left worked up.
What?
The guy on the far left.
Oh, yeah.
See, most of those are his harem.
They all are, yes.
Well,
and I can tell you about a person who was threatened, very frightened.
I'm one of them. I was
by the big guy.
I was in Canada. And I wanted to get an elk, and it was the male's time to get those females. And that male elk thought I wanted his females for some strange reason. Even though I don't look like an elk, I don't think. And that big guy came after me. I jumped in my rental car, and he almost rammed right into my rental car. He was mad.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah. Males when they're in that period, and you don't mess with them. They are very defensive, and they think you're an elk, and they think you want their female. So don't mess with them. I'm telling you, that elk almost knocked my car. I mean, I'm surprised it didn't hit the car. It was like right there at the window.
Yeah.
So watch out for male elks.
Now that you mention it, I noticed
male humans too.
The male elk in that picture who's on the far left, he's looking to the right, and all of the females are pretty much looking back at him. And he's got all of his women within.
Yeah.
They're
Within
very
view.
defensive. And so, yeah, watch that.
You,
Okay,
you
number
really,
one.
you really don't want to wind up on a YouTube.
No,
Joan, is that a Z6 picture?
There's a lot of people who on YouTube who wander too close to an elk or buffalo or whatever else.
Mhm.
I was one of them. You know, I just didn't think
alligators.
I don't know why he thought I wanted his
Alligators,
female
I'll
elk.
say.
I don't get that. But anyway, first place. Wow, ta-da, ring the bell. This goes to Mr. Daryl
Yeah.
Neal, our president and knockout.
I haven't seen a ribbon for some time, so this was appreciated here.
Good job.
I can tell you about it, strengths and weaknesses. First is, I like to take pictures on the plant rather than bring them in and put them on the tabletop, even though I do the tabletop. This was on the plant. That's why you get the background you do. The second thing is that digital sensors have a problem with the color red. If you went out in bright sunshine and took a picture of this, be this garish thing. So it was cloudy. You know, I have a book on why photographers love cloudy days. And this is an example. The third thing is that it's focus stacking. I think you probably figured that out, which actually leads to a weakness. You'll see that, for instance, on the far right, you see the texture in that petal. But then you look a little further back on that same petal and it's smooth. Don't you think it ought to be textured? Well, I do. And I'm wondering if I didn't do enough focal lengths. You know, you can set up, this is done manually, where I move it a little bit, take a picture, move it a little bit, take a picture. But if you set it up in cameras now, and I'm just starting to do this because I've done it so long manually, I could make, let's see, 50 pictures at different focal lengths and have the computer merge them all. And I want to try that because it might be that then I wouldn't see a little flat, shiny area like that right petal. On the other hand, it could reflect reality. Only my testing out will
Well,
show.
Daryl, I mean, one could also argue the other point is that the critical parts are in focus. That draws your eye to the texture.
Yeah.
And so that blurred background that you're referring to, that's a little less than what you prefer, may actually be a good thing. So it depends how you look at it, but it depends on
the last one is a little blurred, but that is because of focus stacking. I mean, what you do is you take numerous pictures as you move from front to back or back to front, and then you put them in their numerous programs that then take these things and merge them all.
Yeah.
You can do it with landscapes too. The only problem with landscapes, which is true of this too, is wind.
Yeah.
Anything moves, forget it.
I don't know. It's subjective. It depends what you want since you're the creator. I just think the background blurred, it gives that, even though that petal is not sharp as you would like, I don't think that's hurts the image at all in my view. But again, you may prefer sharper.
The problem of getting images of flowers on the plant is movement of the flower because of wind.
Yeah, that's very true. Anyway, good job. Excellent. That's your expertise.
Yeah.
Daryl's very good at this. So,
Daryl, I think you're proving the point that you might be your harshest critic. And
well, you learn that. When I started out in this club years ago, and
you talked me into
person come give a talk who said, "I'm my hardest critic," and I thought, huh? And I'll take a picture of something and say, "Oh, I like that." But now, after years of being through all of these competitions, I sit there and go, I don't know, Daryl.
Well, you talked me into changing my mind. I'm taking it back.
okay, we're taking it back. I get first. Daryl's been no, I'm just kidding. Daryl's very good at that. He's very talented at that. So anyway.